If you were en route to Alaska, what would you be looking to get? What does an acceptable deal look like?
He is not meeting with a friend. He is meeting with an adversary, and an adversary who wants to see the destruction of the United States.
This woman should be in jail. Literally, Hillary Clinton should be behind bars. And so should the people who work for her who did this. This is so blatantly corrupt.
When a conversation suddenly stops and everyone pretends everything is fine, something unusual is happening. On live television, that moment becomes impossible to ignore. Hillary Clinton is caught in silence as Megyn Kelly presses forward with a difficult question, filling the room with discomfort. There's no yelling or chaos, just a heavy pause that says more than words ever could. What comes next ends up being even more memorable than the silence itself.
She puts out this tweet, and it's a picture of her, a much younger Hillary, and the caption on the hat reads, "But her emails." And she writes in her tweet, "Bringing this back in light of recent news. Get a limited edition But Her Emails hat and support Onward Together groups working to strengthen our democracy." The nerve of this woman to have committed.
Before moving ahead, make sure to hit subscribe and like so you don't miss what unfolds next. Megyn Kelly steps into the discussion much like a sharp pencil beside unfinished homework, polished, direct, and focused on the same unanswered issues Hillary Clinton has repackaged for years.
Wanted to distract from her email scandal. She cooked up a plan to accuse Trump of being a Russian agent in order to distract from her own legitimate scandal. She made up a scandal about Trump being a Russian asset. And they banked on the intel agencies working with her to perpetuate this lie, and it appears they were only too happy.
There's no dramatic buildup or flashy entrance needed. The moment Kelly speaks, the story shifts instantly, from carefully managed authority to long-awaited responsibility. That contrast alone changes the tone of the exchange.
This mug, we'll put it on the screen. You can see it here on my notes. Have you seen this?
I haven't seen it. I see a little
It's
one
a mug
on your
that's
notes.
got like an outline of her, and she's sipping a coffee, and it reads, "Turns out she was right about everything."
My God.
She tweeted it out, writing, or on Insta, "We recently had some new merch made based on a phrase I hear a lot. The design happened to be finalized today."
Hillary Clinton's confidence, built over decades of titles and recognition, suddenly feels less like strength and more like a protective layer wearing thin. Fame doesn't turn uncertainty into fact, and Megyn Kelly makes that clear. She refuses to let reputation replace clarity, steadily breaking down the illusion piece by piece.
Aaron Mate explained she had this CrowdStrike group that suggested it was the Russians who had hacked the DNC. They took that hook, line, and sinker, and so on. So this shit's crazy. What she did, I don't even have the words. She's still walking around acting like she won and he stole this election, and it was the one back in 2016, and that it was not legitimate.
Megyn Kelly pressures with logic, not volume, a far more unsettling tactic for someone used to commanding attention with sheer presence. The carefully curated aura around Hillary Clinton begins to fade. Like gravity quietly reminding a floating object it can't stay aloft forever, Kelly's effect is subtle, but lasting. For years, a key part of Clinton's political image has been projecting authority while remaining deliberately vague. That works until someone refuses to play along. Kelly exposes how Clinton's statements often orbit a topic without ever landing, producing motion but little substance.
Of course, is the original election denier. I'm sure you voted for her in 2016.
Well, she's not an election denier.
She absolutely was the OG election denier.
First of all, she came out before the sun had risen to concede the election to Trump.
And then spent the next 4 years saying he was illegitimate. He was an illegitimate president.
She came out that night.
She
in
conceded the
dark
election.
Purple suit and conceded the election.
Correct. And then spent the next 4 years trying to convince us.
For the next 4 years, Clinton tried to convince us this ambiguity wasn't real. Kelly's greatest weapon here is her refusal to rely on emotion. She demonstrates that scrutiny isn't persecution, it's an expectation, undermining Clinton's habit of framing criticism as unfair. Typical defenses of victimhood fall flat against decades of influence and power. Clinton's legacy starts to resemble a flashy store with appealing ads but questionable products, as Kelly methodically highlights the gap between claimed competence and actual results. She adds no unnecessary commentary. The imbalance speaks for itself. The contrast alone becomes quietly humorous, revealing the absurdity of presenting complexity while evading clarity when faced with calm, unwavering examination.
Stole his first term as president. These absolute liars who run around trying to act like they're the protectors of democracy completely ruined it, tried to undermine it at every turn and at the highest levels with lies, with out-and-out lies that were really serious, and changed foreign policy and changed the course of history in this country in Trump's presidency. And there must be accountability. There has to be actual criminal accountability for those.
Megyn Kelly turns what once seemed sophisticated into something oddly hollow, like a designer bag stuffed with crumpled brochures, by breaking complex arguments into clear logic. Hillary Clinton's institutional jargon now sounds less like expertise and more like exposed camouflage. Kelly points out that Clinton's career often relied on enduring disagreements rather than resolving them. Longevity is not the same as vindication. Supporters celebrate her staying power as achievement, but Kelly reframes it as an extraordinary ability to survive consequences without truly facing them. This forces the audience to reconsider whether survival equals accountability, landing with sharp precision. By stripping away the emotional shields that usually protect Clinton from tough questioning, Kelly leaves her words to stand, or fall, on their own. Statements that once seemed like leadership now feel like scripted reassurances, hoping no one presses further. The irony is how seriously these claims are treated despite their shaky foundation. Highlighting historical firsts and symbolic wins starts to read less like accomplishment and more like a distraction from unresolved issues as the scrutiny intensifies.
Clearly violated the law with that homebrew server that had been accessed by foreign agents. She compromised national intelligence information. She did things she would never have allowed anybody at the State Department to do under her. And that leaves me back to Schellenberger here. This is page 4 of his report. He writes as follows: the Russian reports, again, that the Dutch spied on, that we got our hands on, also claimed, and listen to this, I mean, you probably already know this.
This balance stops Hillary Clinton from hiding behind legacy talking points, forcing her public persona to confront the present. When Megyn Kelly highlights how Clinton often frames her choices as inevitable, she shifts the discussion to accountability. By emphasizing choice and consequence, Kelly closes Clinton's usual escape hatch. As inevitability crumbles under simple logic, it's like a magician's trapdoor quietly revealed, adding subtle irony. Kelly shows how many of Clinton's strategic moves were often retroactively justified, turning supposed brilliance into improvisation. Her calm, precise delivery makes the critique land harder than any accusation. The audience begins to question how many confident statements were actually veiled admissions. Kelly also exposes the tension in Clinton's public image, a persona that avoids transparency, demands confidence, and seeks attention that can't be sustained. Clarity, not complexity as a smokescreen, is what builds trust. Without raising her voice, Kelly draws attention to simple logic, highlighting the absurdity of Clinton's convoluted narratives. Clinton's composure starts to feel like a rehearsed performance rather than genuine confidence. Once lauded as professionalism, her calm now seems scripted, and substance can't compete with Kelly's refusal to be swayed by tone alone.
Loyal and loneliest goalkeeper in history. Christmas Day, 1937. Charlton versus Chelsea. A fog so thick you couldn't see your own feet. 60 minutes in, the ref blows the whistle to abandon the game. Everyone leaves the pitch, except one man. Sam Bartram stood there for 30 minutes in total silence. He thought his team was just dominating the other side. Finally, a policeman emerged from the fog. He stared at Sam and said, "What on earth are you doing? The game was called off."
Megyn Kelly avoids personal attacks, which makes her critique even sharper. Clinton can't claim unfair treatment. The focus stays on decisions, patterns, and results, delivered with dry wit that forces the audience to connect the dots. This cerebral approach is more damaging and memorable than emotional jabs. Kelly dismantles Clinton's habit of dismissing criticism as misunderstanding, showing that the problem isn't comprehension, it's coherence, consistency, and accountability. Lessons appear unlearned, and goodwill is expected rather than earned. By questioning these assumptions, Kelly places Clinton in a context where power offers no shield, making her public image increasingly outdated, like software long overdue for an update.
Well, remember, Obama's president. Loretta Lynch is his attorney general. And her DOJ/FBI are investigating the Hillary Clinton email scandal. And also now we learn simultaneously working with the Hillary Clinton campaign to bury that scandal in favor of calling Trump a Russian agent. Okay, so the Russian reports also claim that Attorney General Loretta Lynch had privately told a Clinton campaign official.
Kelly's final impact comes not from a dramatic revelation, but from cumulative clarity. Each discrepancy compounds, like moving furniture on a shaky floor, as Clinton struggles to maintain control. By the end, her carefully curated persona looks less like a fortress and more like a museum exhibit that hasn't aged gracefully. Kelly treats Clinton as a public figure subject to scrutiny, not an untouchable icon, stripping away mystique and leaving a record that must stand on its own. Calm, patient, and precise, Kelly never rushes or loses composure, making the takedown devastating. In a world where every statement is examined, Clinton's reliance on managed messaging collapses. The audience is left with unsettling insight rather than anger, witnessing how authority can masquerade as legitimacy when reason is replaced with respect and content with symbolism. Once bolstered by titles and tenure, Clinton's legacy now bears the weight of unresolved issues.
Hillary Clinton decided to drop an op-ed in the New York Times today that's entitled, "How Much Dumber Will This Get?" And she uses Signalgate and the messaging by Pete Hegseth and Mike Wallace and JD Vance and Tulsi and others on there as the jumping off point to talk about how dumb the Trump administration is. Some highlights. She calls the Trump administration hypocritical, dangerous, and dumb over this.
The laughter comes from realization, not malice. There's nothing funnier than watching confidence collide with accountability. Megyn Kelly doesn't need to raise her voice. The impact is devastating in its calm precision. Clinton's polished image now shows cracks under scrutiny that no skill can hide. The story reminds us that authority depends on deference, which disappears when evaluation replaces reverence, and logic replaces adoration. Complexity doesn't erase responsibility, and intention doesn't excuse results. What once seemed clever now reads as polished ways to say very little, exposing the gap between effort and impact. Kelly's persistence reveals how Clinton's public defense often leans on good intentions over tangible outcomes, a strategy that works in a biography but collapses under examination.
Russia briefly. You and I have talked before about how Hillary Clinton labeled you a puppet of Putin, a Russian asset. Debbie Wasserman Schultz shamefully said the same. And I saw recently President Trump withdrew Hillary Clinton's security clearance, which you had to do.
Yes.
And that must have been a little fun. Right? Oh, just a little fun.
I smiled.
Of course you did. You're only human.
Yeah.
Kelly forces a confrontation Clinton has long avoided, exposing where preparation and expertise are claimed, but results lag. It's like a long-running show finally fixing continuity errors viewers were told to ignore. Irony emerges as plans are emphasized, yet solutions often arrive only after consequences are felt. When preparation collides with repeated surprises, it looks more like overconfidence than foresight. Kelly doesn't need to point it out. The tension speaks for itself. By treating certainty as something to prove, not assert, Clinton's moral confidence begins to fade. Without verification, confidence feels like branding, and branding falters when the audience demands proof instead of slogans.
It's the hypocrisy that bothers me. It's the stupidity. We're all shocked that President Trump and his team don't actually care about protecting classified information or federal record retention laws. I mean, this is so rich, given her history. What's much worse is that top Trump administration officials put our troops in jeopardy by sharing military plans on a commercial messaging app and unwittingly invited a journalist into the chat. That's dangerous, and it's just...
By exposing how Hillary Clinton's influence often depended on being seen as inevitable rather than accountable, Megyn Kelly dismantles the myth. Once framed as unstoppable, Clinton's image now relies on everyone agreeing not to look too closely. When Kelly points out Clinton's frequent use of collective responsibility as an excuse, a key layer of cover is stripped away. Accountability is no longer optional. Watching obligations collapse under scrutiny.
Done. Former President Bill Clinton. he tweets out, "Where did the time go? There have sure been a lot of happy Valentine's Days. Here's to one more."
Wait, what? What's he got planned afterward? I really like Trump's, actually. I think Trump's is better than both Bill and Hillary's. I think it's right up there with Shakespeare's sonnet 118. Maybe that's the same one that I'll send to my wife, sweet little Elisa, tonight. You know, "Dear honey, even with all of the haters and the losers coming after me, you know, you..."
Is as grim as a house of cards toppling in slow motion, yet quietly humorous. Kelly's precise words and calm delivery make the contrast unmistakable. Clinton's once commanding stance now resembles someone defending ideas they barely grasp. Kelly highlights how longevity is often mistaken for intelligence, showing that survival can appear procedural rather than heroic, especially when lessons are ignored. Endurance, once praised as perseverance, now looks hollow. Clinton's polished demeanor feels increasingly disconnected from reality, like a well-pressed suit hiding inconvenient truths. Kelly's careful analysis proves that poise without coherence is mere aesthetics, and nothing undermines gravitas faster than realizing it rests solely on reputation. The humor is subtle, but relentless. Megyn Kelly makes Clinton's claims hard to dismiss by focusing on patterns rather than accusations.
Praise Chelsea Clinton because her mother Hillary, for some reason, thought it would be moving, a good idea, a good PR move, for her to on camera read the acceptance speech she was going to give in 2016, the night she never was able to let down the balloons and the fireworks. And it's part of a masterclass, I guess, educational video on the topic of resilience.
Letting the audience draw conclusions. The familiar defenses of knowledge and purpose that once shielded Clinton gradually crumble. Her public persona starts to feel like an overextended brand in need of scrutiny, rather than a legendary figure. More accumulation than inevitability. Decades of positioning, messaging, and moral framing begin to obscure the core. Kelly doesn't need commentary. The contrast speaks for itself. On one side is reputation, heritage, and assumed credibility. On the other is careful questioning and a refusal to be impressed. Authority built on narrative alone cannot endure careful examination. The ultimate question emerges on its own. Is it still worth believing? Not what it claims to be, but whether it truly stands for anything.